Good morning. This is Regina Adams coming at you with another busted but blessed message. So, I actually had to go back to Facebook to adjust so that way people can actually find me, because when you forget that little ad sign, can't nobody find you. So, my bad. I am learning. Excuse me. Also, I'm trying to do this early in the morning before the noise factors becomes the noise around me actually becomes a factor. you know I'm just getting started. I am so thankful um, to be here and to be in this type of setting, because I would never imagine that me starting to post on Facebook would bring me to this point. And I am thankful that I started on Facebook, because I know a lot of people say things are fake, and which I didn't know it was called fake book, but I didn't know that. I just knew that I was posting a story of my life to explain me. And even as I'm going forward this morning, and I've talked about a lot on Facebook the past few weeks, and just looking back over my life and being so thankful about all the lessons, because that's what life is. Life is a lesson. Life constantly teaches you about you, to an extent that at some point it's your responsibility to learn who you really are, because it's easy to agree with all the negative things being said about you when that's not the truth of who you are. You know, looking back over my life, there are a lot of things that I realize shaped me. And one of the things I talked about before was being a fighter, fighting for my daughter. And again, this is an adult conversation, so I understand if you may not agree or understand, but I pray that your spiritual learning will increase to mature to understand what I'm saying. So last week the Lord showed me that the person that I missed the most was reincarnated into my daughter. And I was hesitant on saying that, because I knew it was going, I know what the truth that's going to happen behind it, the anger and things of that nature. But I also know that my brother and sister both know that I needed her spirit more than either one of them did, because they were more independent without my mom. I was so dependent upon my mom. And even when my daughter was younger, I remember we would go, the City of Refuge used to serve meals at 5 p.m. at 81st and Hoover at the old church when it was Greater Bethany. And I think my daughter was about 4 at the time. And we would go and we would help. And we went a couple weeks. And so my daughter, she's a fast learner, but the spirit in her, she wanted to help plate the food, which she wanted to do more than just hand out cups. She wanted to put the chicken on the plates, not the scoop and stuff, but just the simple stuff. Put the gloves on, put the chicken on the plates and things of that nature. And understanding that she is young, my desire was to not tell her no when it comes to helping other people, because I didn't want to stifle that desire in her while she was young. Now, the lady over it said she couldn't do it, and I understand that, because she was responsible for the food, to make sure the food got out to the people. What would happen if this 4-year-old dropped food, or dropped a lot of food that was needed to feed the people? And I understood her side. It was never an argument. It was never any level of disrespect. It was just an understanding to know that my daughter, in her mind, was too young to plate food. Respect. So we stopped going because I didn't want that side of her to be stifled. And understanding now of who she is, recognizing that that same spirit that my mother had when I was growing up, my daughter started showing that to me at 3 and 4, wanting to help people, wanting to do more than just hand out cups, and no, she couldn't pour drinks. She was too little, but wanting to do more, And I remember, back in when my mother was alive, back in the 80s, she worked for Social Security in Oxnard between B and C Street next to the park. And I remember her sharing a story with me about this gentleman, really big gentleman, broken leg, came into Social Security yelling at the top of his lungs. Something was going on with his money. And of course, no money, broken leg, being in pain, horrible mix. So they made him sit down for a while and nobody wanted to help him. And my mother told me that she went up to him and she said, "Sir, I'm willing to help you, but I can't help you if you're yelling." She just had that calming spirit, which I'm thankful my daughter still has it. And she brought the man back to her desk. She helped the gentleman. And just as loud as he was yelling when he first walked in, that's how loud he was at thanking my mother for helping him. I grew up where my mother, even when she was sick, we would go to different women of the church, their homes, the elder women whose children had grown up and left. We would go to their homes Saturday morning and we would have to clean. And my mother would wash their hair. My mother would give them a wash up to get ready for church on Sunday, lay out their outfits, make sure that they were fresh, make sure that their wigs were intact, braided up her hair, wash the hair, put them in the plaids. Me, had to clean up, clean the bathrooms, clean the bedrooms, whatever, clean the refrigerator, take the stuff out, clean the refrigerator. But we were never allowed to complain. We were never allowed to definitely complain in the house. And we were never allowed to talk about whose house we were at and how bad it was. We didn't, we weren't allowed. That was something that she didn't allow us to do because she believed in doing alms in secret, alms, good things. Um, um, when everybody has a YouTube or a Facebook page where they're giving money, but then they have the camera up, and of course I grew up when I'm older than Google. I'm older than YouTube. I'm older than the internet. There was no internet when I was growing up. So when I was growing up, everything we did, the only way people found out was through word of mouth. And our mouths were shut, according to my mom. We better not say one word. And I remember even when she got sick and she couldn't work anymore, and we moved from our home to an apartment, and the church had brought us a food basket, and my mother, knowing what we ate, went into that food basket and broke it down. And there were 4 smaller baskets that came from that one food basket that she actually took me to deliver to some other people because she knew we didn't eat those foods. And she knew we didn't eat those foods. She knew who would eat those foods because she did not want the food to go to waste. She did not want the food to be spoiled because she knew we wouldn't eat them. But I remember us in our 1978 Ford Torino, that's what we had. And I think she was 6. So this was the Christmas of '83. And I remember taking the baskets to the car. And then I remember the passenger door wouldn't close right on you had to lift it up and close it. And then if you didn't do it right before we figured it out, then we would just hold the door. And then when she would make a left turn, the door would swing out. And we, would scared her, but that's what we did. And I remember her driving and me in the car, and she was like, okay, take this to that house right there. So I would grab the basket, go knock on the door, and then hand them the basket, and then they would wave to my mom in the car. She's like, okay, come on. And so we would drop those baskets off of the food basket that we received, because she knew we wouldn't eat those particular foods. And it was the early 80s. So I was 14, 13, 12 when we were going to clean, when we were going to people's houses. Those were the times that I learned about being good to people. Not because I was expecting something back from them, but because I was expecting something greater to come from God. And even as I've gotten older, my daughter continues to do what I did and what I do, because I realize that spirit is in her. When the spirit is in you to help, you come up with plans, you figure things out and try to help not just yourself, but other people in the process. And that's why when I told God that, I remember back in '98 when I told God that I was going to do what he said, and I know there's going to be a times where I feel like the brokest woman in the world, but I also want to be the richest woman in the world too, because the more money I make, the more I can help people without going broke in the process. But it wasn't till I went through this experience that I understood the most important thing people needed was to be healed from life that hurt them, and it wasn't their fault. And even as I made my post on yesterday and understanding that, no, I'm not going to church tomorrow because I know what's going on right now. And I have a future to live for. And even with the restraining order, the person who ain't supposed to be here is still here, hosting meet and greets downstairs on Monday. Here last night, trying to track my daughter as they're coming through the door, So I know there's a clear and present danger. And I'm not going to church, not because I'm afraid, but because I know I have a future when this struggle is over, when this level of attack ends. I know I still have a future. And even as I am telling you about my life, I want you to understand that the desire to help has always been there. I just didn't have the opportunity. The heart that comes from always wanting to help people is something that's taught as a child. You don't all of a sudden one day like, oh, okay, yeah, we're going to feed the hungry. Where'd that idea come from? Because you never said it before. Where'd that come from? When I teach a message, or as I'm talking to you right now, my talking, again, is for you to get clarity of who I am. So that way, as I bring the other things to you, and I start talking about other things, you already have the introduction. You already know who I am. So I know a lot of people do things differently, but this is just a message of why I'm sending you guys love for 5 seconds. Because when I look back over my life and I'm thankful that I am maturing to where God always wanted me to be. I feel like it's easier for me to send more love out to people than to just smother my daughter with it, whoosh, get her in that bear hug lock and then, it's a wrap. But now I'm trying to put it out in the universe more so then that way more people can know that you are loved, whether you know me or not, whether you've ever met me or not, know that you are loved. And that my prayer is that God sends you someone or even shows you in your everyday life how loved you are. You guys have a great day. And remember, even if your life looks busted, you're still blessed nonetheless.